Welcome to An Hour to Give. I'm Sam Laprade. This week is all about Shelter Movers Ottawa. You might be thinking to yourself, I don't even know about this organization. Well, today we're going to change that. And this show is personal for me. If you've seen anything I've done over the last number of years, domestic violence and intimate partner violence are top of the list for me of causes that I support and I really want to get behind. And today we're introducing the one and only Courtney Waterfall. Hi, Courtney. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm so happy you're here with me. We're going to talk a lot about the issues regarding domestic violence, and we're going to talk about how Shelter Movers helps. But I want to get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
So tell me what your role is with Shelter Movers Ottawa.
So I am the interim chapter director for Shelter Movers Ottawa. I have been with Shelter Movers for about 3.5 years, but I'm really excited to help lead the team in Ottawa.
It's amazing. So you know how passionate I am about this organization, and very early on I was told about Shelter Movers coming to Ottawa, and I know you're moving across the country, really important, but being here in the nation's capital, I think there's a sense of people thinking domestic violence doesn't happen in this city. The reality is it's in every street and every community in this community. Give me the numbers across the country.
Across the country, we have done, we started moving in 2016, but in Ottawa and the surrounding area, we have done almost 1,300 moves just since 2017, and the numbers are growing. So we're doing about 20 moves per month here, and I think it's around 150 moves per month nationally.
It is remarkable how you've stepped in. It really is a niche that Shelter Movers is providing, and we're going to talk all about that. And I think most recently we've had a very tragic outcome here in our community of a woman who lost her life, to an intimate partner. But the reality is, this is happening more and more. The pandemic was a very challenging time. A lot of people were told to go home and be safe, where home was the least safe place for them. So talk to me a little bit about what you've been seeing.
We definitely saw an increase during the pandemic, and I don't want to say that the pandemic didn't create abusers, but it did escalate the abuse that people were already experiencing. And our clients, the survivors that we serve, didn't have that opportunity to get away from their abuser. So prior to the pandemic, they might be leaving the house for 8 hours a day to go to work, or the abuser would be leaving the house for 8 hours, 9 hours to go to work. So there was a little bit of relief during the day. And during the pandemic, they didn't have that. So we did see an increase across the country. Some of our chapters opened during the pandemic and since the pandemic, and the numbers are still growing in those chapters as well. So it's not just because of the pandemic, but it definitely did have an impact for sure.
And we've just starting to use certain terms when it comes to domestic violence. Sadly, OPS, Ottawa Police Service, used for the very first time the term femicide. Do you find that this is becoming a topic that people are more willing to talk about, and maybe that's also having people say, I'm going to putting up their hand and saying, I want to leave this situation?
I think so. I think it's certainly helping remove the stigma that some people associate with intimate partner violence specifically, but gender-based violence as a whole. More people are talking about it. People are understanding that it's impacting everyone in their life. So it might be your neighbor, it might be your sister, your mother, yourself. There's not any one type of person that we're serving. It doesn't matter how much money they make. It doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter, where they're from, what culture they are. It really hits everyone.
And I think that was the biggest surprise for me, if I can just be really vulnerable and say that I think before Shelter Movers came along and opened up my eyes, I had this sense that it was happening in certain communities. And then your team shared with me and said, Sam, we're going into $1 million homes and removing necessities so people can leave a situation like they're experiencing to start afresh. And it doesn't matter that it's $1 million home, the house is worth $200,000, it doesn't matter that it's happening in every community. I think that was my biggest surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of people that say the same thing. We've moved people out of multi-million-dollar gated communities, and that's been surprising for some of our volunteers. And then they realize that they probably know somebody that has been impacted by gender-based violence.
And can we talk a little bit about what we mean when we speak about the abuse? Because there's different types of abuse, and I think this is just starting to come to the forefront as well.
Absolutely. So a lot of people just assume that it's physical abuse that we are supporting survivors through, but it's not. There's financial abuse, there's spiritual abuse, emotional, mental. You know, we cover the whole spectrum of what that might look like for an individual. So it doesn't have to be physical. Those other parts are sometimes more prevalent in the community too, and they're more hidden. So people can often see signs of physical abuse, right? You see bruises, you see black eyes, broken bones. You know, we've had volunteers out on moves that see holes in the walls at the homes. But the emotional side is very different and can sometimes take longer to heal from.
And we know that, you know, being isolated from your family, being isolated from friends, being told you can't go out, being told you have to sort of be under somebody's watch, your paycheck being taken. You know, being allotted a very small amount of money, even though it's your money, or if it's shared family money, being really restrained in terms of finances, and that's control, right?
Absolutely, and oftentimes the survivor that we're serving doesn't see it until it is impacting every part of their life. So it's this very slow trickle that it happens. You know, I tell people, I hate the question, well, why didn't she leave? I hate that. Because they didn't go out on the first date and he started hitting her or calling her names or, you know, limiting how much money she had access to. It happens so slowly that on the inside, most times you don't see it. And people on the outside can see it and can say, you know, I kind of compare it to my kids growing. I see my kids every day, so I don't see them growing. But my family that only sees them a couple of times a year, we go visit, and they're like, they've grown so much. And then I think about it, I'm like, oh, I guess they have. And so for a survivor that's living in it, they don't see that slow progression of the isolation that they're experiencing from their family. They're also made to believe that the abuser loves and cares for them and is doing it for their own good. So, you know, I don't think we should go see your mom because, you know, she said that hurtful thing to you, and I don't think she wants the best for you, or she's trying to keep us apart. Those sorts of messages are just, they slowly happen over a period of time. And it can be hard to see from the inside.
And I don't want to take away from what Shelter Movers Ottawa is talking about today, but I will share a little bit about my own story. So how I've described it is the game Jenga. So the tower is built nice and tall, but then the pieces just start to get replaced. You feel the holes.
Yeah.
You feel them wholly. But when it topples, you hope it's not too late.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
That's such a great way of putting it.
And when you hear people's stories, because you must hear everything, is it hard on you?
It is, but I think about it, I try and think about it from the positive side of it. So, you know, we do hear stories from the survivors we're serving about the abuse that they've experienced. We see their kids, we see the holes in the walls, we see the damage to their items. But I think about the community we've built and the team that's come together to get them out. And that's what I go home with at the end of the day, is that hope for this survivor that she doesn't have to be in the abusive home. She's safe now. We have found people that are dedicating their time and their money to, you know, helping us move survivors. And that's what I take with me.
Because, and we're going to talk all about volunteers, we're going to talk about ways to help. I mean, we need lots of hours to talk everything about Shelter Movers, but we're going to get it done today in an hour. We're going to have an opportunity as well to meet one of your colleagues. But I think the volunteer piece is so interesting to me because people are dedicating their free time Nobody likes moving, Courtney.
Moving
okay?
is the worst.
Exactly. I'm just going to put it out there. So no one likes moving. But people are like, I'm going to dedicate my free time to help this woman and her children escape this life. And I think one of the most poignant moments for me is when I asked a former colleague of yours, you know, tell me about what they want to take. And this woman, although this house was full of furniture and full of clothes and toys and everything, all she wanted was her son's hockey equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had clients, you know, the most important thing to them is, we had one that it was rocks from her garden. Those were really important. We had one client that wanted her son's ashes because he had passed away a few years before, and that was the one thing she wanted to go back to get.
Yeah. But sometimes it's not safe for them to do it, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's where Shelter Movers steps in. And going across the country, I'm just so proud of this organization and how it's evolved. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But right here in the capital, to have this service, I don't know people really comprehend everything that you do. So we're going to get into all of that. What would you say to someone you just meet on the street for the very first time and they say, what do you do? What do you tell them?
I tell them that I work with the absolute best people every day, and we help survivors of gender-based violence flee to safety.
Yeah, it's a really remarkable organization. And people are going to be able to help in all sorts of ways. So
Absolutely.
we're looking for volunteers today.
Yes.
There's no two ways about it. And of course, we're looking for financial help.
Yes.
And I love to think about philanthropy as time, talent, and treasure. And we're going to tick all those boxes today and talk about everything that that people can do to get behind Shelter Movers Ottawa. We're going to learn more about Shelter Movers Ottawa. And I'm really anxious, not obviously in Ottawa proper, but we're going to talk a lot about rural, around Ottawa as well.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of growth in the rural areas outside of Ottawa.
Perfect. We're going to do all of that. Courtney Waterfall is going to be back with us here on An Hour to Give. We're going to talk all about Shelter Movers Ottawa. I'm Sam Laprade. Come on back. And we're back on An Hour to Give. I'm Sam Laprade. Courtney Waterfall has stayed with us, of course, from Shelter Movers Ottawa, and she has brought her colleague with her, and that is Erin Bavle. How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Same here.
What's your role at Shelter Movers?
So I am the new operations manager for Shelter Movers Ottawa.
And what does that mean? What does that big job mean?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. It's pretty new to me, but from what I understand, I'm responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of what we do at Shelter Movers. So that's everything from intake of our new clients to scheduling, and we oversee a team of move coordinators, and then actually overseeing all of our wonderful volunteer movers and drivers on move day.
Okay. So it's a big job.
It is. It is.
Yes.
We have an amazing team, and they make my life so much easier.
Yeah. And you're happy to have Erin. I know this already.
Yes.
Yes.
Very happy to have Erin.
I could tell. In the green room, it's like, thank heavens Erin's here. So that's wonderful. And so let's just start right at the beginning. 2016. Tell us how this all came to be. Shelter Movers.
Shelter Movers in general. Yeah. So our founder, Mark, was on paternity leave, and he realized that there was a gap for this kind of service. Didn't know that the shelters weren't providing this. And I think a lot of people assume that this is part of what shelters do, helping clients move in and out. And so he started working with one shelter, rented a truck, got some people together, started doing the moves, and then it really grew very quickly from there, opening chapters in Ottawa and Vancouver, Nova Scotia, and now we're coast to coast, and we have our 10th chapter that's about to start doing moves this fall.
Amazing. In 8 years.
Yes.
Can we just pause and reflect on that for a second?
I know, it's incredible.
It's incredible growth.
And 2,000 volunteers across the country. The fact that we've had so many people come together to help us with our mission of moving people to safety it's incredible.
And I think what's really important to note is this started in Toronto. So you think about how different Toronto would be from Ottawa, how different Ottawa is from Maritimes, and how different it is from out west. So every community has had to really dig deep for each of their people, right?
Absolutely. While each community is a little bit different, and we may have to encourage people to volunteer in different ways. We need to, get our volunteers together in different ways. Ultimately, this problem is happening across the country, and it's the same. Like 123 women and girls have been murdered this year alone, up January to August 31st. Most of them by an intimate partner or a family member. That's across the country. So each chapter is unique in its own way, but it's the same. We're all working together for the same cause across the country.
That number's hard to hear, Erin. That number is hard to hear. And is this what drives you, knowing that this is such an issue?
Yes, definitely. That's a big part of it. Another thing that drives me is just our team of volunteers. I was one. That's how I got started with Shelter Movers a couple years ago. And honestly, every move I go on, I meet new people. You see the same people every now and then. We have our regulars, but I'm always amazed at the kinds of people I get to meet on these moves. And our clients are amazing people, obviously, and so are our volunteers. And so it's the people that definitely keep me coming back.
And they're from all walks of life, just like our clients are too.
I love that.
Like we have students, we have seniors that are retired, and everything in between, newcomers and people that have lived here their whole lives. And that's really incredible to see everyone come together.
It's like just sort of supporting a community that is full of, different experiences, but having people come, because everybody has their own reason for coming as well to volunteer.
Absolutely.
And I've heard over the years a number of your volunteers, and some are coming because they want a career in law enforcement and they want to sort of understand it, but some are coming because they experienced it as a child.
Absolutely.
And so they're wanting to give back to maybe a mom of today when maybe someone wasn't there to help their mom. I heard those stories too.
We hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, those moments are really important. And when I think about the move, so my very first thing when I heard about shelter movers, I'm like, how does everybody stay safe? That's the mom in me, Erin. I want to know how everybody's staying safe. So walk us through from intake to move. Walk us through the process.
Sure. So our clients come to us through referrals. So that would be via community agencies, women's shelters, and essentially we don't accept self-referrals. So our clients typically get in touch with a caseworker through one of those paths and then reach out to us. And then our intake coordinators, who are volunteers, will send them out an intake form and they'll collect information regarding our client's unique situation. And then from there, it'll get passed through to move coordination, and that's typically when we make first verbal contact with our clients. Initially, it's through email or usually, but then with move coordination, we get on the phone and then we talk with them about what they need, how many things they have, where it's going, from which location to where, and then there, as you mentioned, we talk about safety. And we talk about if there's any specific security risks unique to their situation. And then we'll classify our moves as low, medium, or high risk, depending on each move is entirely unique, so it really does change. And a move may be classified initially as low risk, but then along the line somewhere something changes and it could then escalate to a medium or high risk. And our medium and high risk moves are where we have security or police present.
Because you would want to know if the partner was going to be home, anticipating if they were going to be home, dealing with all of that. That would be an important piece.
Definitely. Like it, we classify our moves as resettlement moves, escorted, or urgent exit. And so resettlement moves are typically when our client is safe, they're in a safe location, and they're moving to another location that's been deemed safe. So those are typically low risk. But then escorted moves typically mean that we are returning to a place where the abuse has happened. So typically that means our client's abuser may or may not be present or still living at that location or may know about it. And so if that's the case, then yes, we will typically have security or police present for things like that.
Because keeping not only obviously the person fleeing safe, but keeping your volunteers safe.
Exactly. We value our volunteers and our clients equally, and safety is paramount. It is for me as operations manager. I mean, I come from a background where I worked in logistics and construction, and so safety is always top of mind for me.
And post-move, how do you care for people post-move?
So typically feedback forms get sent out to our clients and also to our volunteers. And I know personally that I welcome feedback anytime someone wants to share it, you know, whether it's positive, negative, constructive, neutral, whatever it is, you know, anytime that we can improve our services or do things a little bit better, I'm all ears. So that's definitely one way we do it. Are you aware of other?
And that's one of the reasons why we require our clients to come to us through a referral, because we don't provide long-term support to our clients. So we want to make sure they have somebody to support them in that longer term. We know women are likely to return 7 times before they leave for good. So we want to make sure they're as successful as possible in that transition to their violence-free life. And then for our volunteers as well, we have an employee assistance program. So they can reach out to our volunteer services manager, our operations manager, or myself for a debrief, but they can also access our employee assistance program if a move was particularly hard on them.
Because once again, I've never done a move. I have so much respect for all of you that do. I think about my daughter. My daughter's 16 years old. So I think it would be difficult for me to walk into a home, try and move somebody when I know there's a 16-year-old girl that lives there and I'm helping to remove her items. That might be difficult on somebody, for instance.
Yeah, each case can be challenging depending on the volunteers that are on it, their lived experience that they might have, things that they see on the move. We generally ask on our medium and high risk moves that children aren't present, so that helps a little bit with that piece, but sometimes there are kids present, especially on our lower risk moves. It can make things harder, but it can also make it a little bit more rewarding when you see the kid on a resettlement move and they're getting their toys that have been in storage for 6 months or a year. We've had some volunteers that have gone on the first move with the client when we're moving them out of the abusive home, moving their stuff into storage, and then they've gotten to go on the move where we're moving that same client into their permanent housing. So to see it come full circle like that can be a very rewarding experience for our volunteers.
Absolutely, that's incredible. And to become a volunteer, if we've inspired someone today, I know we have, Erin, if we've inspired somebody, how would they become a volunteer with Shelter Movers Ottawa?
I believe the easiest way would be to reach out to Shelter Movers, which would be via email. I believe it's volunteerottawa@sheltermovers.com. And then from there, one of our lovely volunteers will reach out and schedule a phone call where we just talk about the process and talk about why you'd like to volunteer with Shelter Movers and what kind of position you'd like to take on. Our biggest need right now is for movers and drivers, specifically drivers, which are volunteer movers who also have the added responsibility of driving one of our passenger vehicles or cube trucks that we use on moves. But we also have roles available for those who aren't interested in moving or driving, on the administrative side, marketing, fundraising. It could even be coordinating, so like scheduling moves or intake coordination, things like that. So
beautifully said.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a role for everybody, and that was kind of where I was wanting to go. Is that just like the clients are everybody, the volunteers are everybody. You need people to fill all these positions, all different skill levels.
Yes, we're about 95% volunteer driven. So our volunteers are doing everything from volunteer recruitment, attending events and encouraging people to volunteer, to doing the interviews, to fundraising and marketing, sending out our volunteer newsletters and creating social media posts, and then the move piece as well.
Yeah, so important. What would you say to somebody that maybe is thinking about volunteering? How would you inspire them to actually pick up the phone or head to that website?
I would say that we're flexible. We're very flexible, and we understand that people don't have a lot of time on their hands. Like I feel like I never have enough time in a day to get everything done. We understand that time is difficult to find, but we're not asking for too much commitment. Even if you if you want to be a volunteer mover, we ask that you try to go on at least one move a month, which is typically 4 to 5 hours a month. So over the course of a month, 4 to 5 hours, I think that's doable for a lot of us. I think we can find that time, and we do try to schedule our moves around our volunteer availability. So oftentimes those are evenings and weekends for most of our volunteers. So I think that's a big piece, is the flexibility.
For sure. We've got lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So Courtney and Aaron aren't going to go anywhere, and we don't want you to go anywhere either. We're talking about Shelter Movers Ottawa here on An Hour to Give. You guys are great.
It can be difficult to talk about intimate partner violence, but we are not letting that stop us today because there's a solution. Shelter Movers Ottawa is there to help, and we're going to talk today all with Courtney and Aaron are joining us again to talk more about this important organization in our city. And Courtney, we think about Ottawa, we think Shelter Movers Ottawa, we think about kind of Ottawa proper, right? 24 wards, it's a very big city, but there are communities surrounding this beautiful city that are often overlooked. Talk to me about the efforts of Shelter Movers Ottawa in the rural communities.
Sure. So we are starting to do a lot more moves in Lanark and Leeds Grenville specifically, but we're also seeing moves in Renfrew as well. And we're trying to grow our team in those areas to be able to meet the demand. We've already done over 100 moves kind of in those more rural communities. It can sometimes be a little bit challenging to find volunteers because they're a smaller community and everyone knows everyone. It can sometimes be a little bit tricky because you may know the person that you're on the move with. So we need to grow a bigger volunteer base just to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me. So we're putting the call out for volunteers today, but that's
Absolutely.
a very specific niche. And when I think about the rural communities, I think about 3 women that lost their lives at the hands of an intimate partner, and the deaths of these 3 women really became a rallying cry around domestic violence in this community, and quite honestly across Canada. The Carol Culleton, I always want to say their names. I never say the name of the person that killed them, but I will say Carol Culleton, Natalie Warmendam, and Anastasia Cusack. These 3 women died under horrific circumstances. And because of that, the inquest that just wrapped up about 18 months ago or so, maybe 2 years ago now, that came out with a lot of recommendations. Has that helped you in your work be able to sort of say, no, this is a need, and rural communities have a very different need?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the work that we're already doing and shows people that it is happening everywhere, because a lot of people don't think that it's happening in the smaller communities and don't know that there's ways that they can get involved and ways they can help. So it's really been a driving force to our expansion in that area, and making people understand that we need help. We can't do it without the support of those communities.
Because I think it is, when you think about, I'm from a small town. I grew up in Deep River. Houses were much farther apart, for instance. Everybody did know everybody. You didn't want to say anything that was happening in the house that you didn't speak outside the home about maybe abuse that was happening because everybody knew everybody and you're related to the police chief and all of those types of things. It can be very challenging for women to find their voice because they can get even more isolated in rural communities, Aaron.
Most definitely, yeah. I think it's easy to believe that it's not happening just because we don't see it or we don't hear about it, and I think it's something that we talk about in our volunteer orientation too. We try to make our volunteers aware that in rural communities there can be a real lack of support. So what is support? It could just be a lack of social services available to someone who is seeking to leave an abusive relationship, or just if you're new to the country, it could be a language thing, or it could be just again, just the amount of support available in an urban setting versus a rural setting is it's apples and oranges, you know, and it can make it that much more difficult to seek help and to know where to find it, and to do so anonymously without someone close to you or someone in your community knowing about it because of the stigma attached to something like that.
For sure. And I really want to take the stigma out, because the reality is the more we talk about this, we can lessen the shame around it. I'm hoping. And the more people, I think, speak up about all of the challenges that go with leaving and adding this rural component onto it, there is hope though, right?
Absolutely. When we talk more about it, we can understand the barriers that people are facing. So for some people, like Erin said, it could be a language barrier, access to service. Some, it might be a transportation piece. They're living out in a rural area and they don't have a vehicle and they can't get to the urban center. They can't get to the shelter. For some, it can be the financial piece, because financial abuse is often such a big part of other forms of abuse, and they don't have access to funds to, you know, pay first and last month's rent or book a moving truck. And then there's an increased safety risk a lot of times in the rural areas because of the access to weapons. If there's, you know, guns for hunting and those sorts of things, that escalates the risk level for us as well. So if we weren't there, then a client is trying to manage that risk level on their own. And we know when a woman makes a decision to leave, that's when the violence escalates and the rates of femicide increase. So if they can utilize our supports to do it in the most safe way, they have the better chance of a safe outcome for them and their children.
It's so important. And I was thinking about the complications even with children, you know, in terms of what school are they going to go to. And there may be, you know, lots of schools within a certain kilometers of houses here in Ottawa, but in the rural communities there, and there's you know, not that many schools, if you will. So it might be complicated for a woman trying to leave. Most
definitely. Yeah, I think, again, yeah, rural communities, the challenges are just so much greater, I think, than within the cities. There's a long list of barriers that someone might face when trying to leave a situation such as that, and I think we've touched on most of them there. But
and I think too, you know, being welcomed into a community. So when you go in, you were mentioning Lanark, Leeds, Grenville, lots of communities. I'm from Deep River, for instance. I mean, I think about, you know, Renfrew County and all of what they would need. You know, how are you welcomed in? How do you sort of approach those communities and say, we're here and we want to help?
We are working on an outreach piece right now. A lot of times the way we kind of enter an area is because an agency in that area reaches out to us, or a donor wants us to focus on a certain area, or we get a group of people in a community that come together and say, we need this here, how can we help? So we are working on that outreach piece right now. We're looking for a growth coordinator to work in that Lanark or Leeds Grenville area, to go out and do community events and meet with people in the area and encourage them to volunteer, and if they can't volunteer, to donate or get involved in some way, and just spread the word about who we are, what we do, and how others can help out with that.
And how are moves different in rural? Or is there still storage available, the truck availability, all of that is all coordinated by you and your team?
That's right. Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because just recently we've secured a partnership with a vehicle rental agency that operates in Smiths Falls and Perth, all the way down to Brockville, and a variety of other communities in that area. So that's a big piece of it. Logistics is a big part of it, especially if our volunteers are coming from Ottawa and servicing those areas. So it's about how do we get our movers and our team members from Ottawa, you know, an hour west, and how do we do so that accommodates, you know, their schedules and their timing and their needs, and makes it easy for them to volunteer. You know, how do we move our team out there, and then same thing, you mentioned storage. You know, it's about securing storage options in those communities, and that's a big part of our expansion right now. But one of the biggest pieces was the vehicle rentals, which we have secured, which is a great step forward in this expansion.
And I know I spoke with a former colleague of yours talking about how somebody just wanted their ID, right? Like when I think about a move, I think about all the boxes I might have of stuff I don't need,
Yep.
But sometimes it's really just, it's emotional. It's their identity.
Yep. Identity, passports, court papers, you know, those things that are really difficult to replace. And we always tell our clients, we'll take as much stuff as we can, but focus on those irreplaceable things. We can come back for furniture, or we can connect you with an organization to get furniture. Focus on the things that can't be replaced, photo albums, all those documents and things like that. There's no way that they can replace it, or it's costly, or takes time.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, as a mom, I would want to have those things that were irreplaceable for my child, right? Like the photo albums, or those little, every mother has those plastic bins full of artwork, and those would be things that would be really important to me, where I can always get a new couch and I can always find a new wardrobe, but I can't replace my child's artwork.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a parent of a almost 4-year-old myself, I can relate to that. And yeah, Courtney mentioned it too. Like, if time is of the essence on moves, and we can't take all at once, we will come back and help you out with those the things that were left behind.
How do you deal with pets when it comes to this? Because is that part of the safety plan as well?
Yes, so a lot of times a woman won't leave for fear of safety of their pet. If they leave, sometimes the abuse can move to the pet. So that is a very real fear for a lot of people. So we will arrange for pet fostering as well, for as long as our clients need it. So if they're going into a shelter where they can't take their pet with them, we will make sure that the pet is cared for until they're in a safe place and they can take their pet with them.
So you've thought of everything, basically. It's
We try
years of
to.
experience. But as you mentioned, Darren, every one of these being unique, right? There must be, although you're all trying really hard, there must be lessons along the way to make things better. And that's why we've got to today, and knowing that, add the rural component. Well, now, maybe when it started in Toronto, that rural component wasn't on the radar. So you're growing as the need grows.
Yes, definitely. And we're trying to help as many folks as we can every week and every month. I think Courtney mentioned, we're averaging maybe around 20 moves a month or so. We've already organized that many for September, for the month of September, and the need is always there. And there's always room for improvement. We can always get better at what we do. We can always get more efficient, or we can always do things a little bit better each time.
And you need resources to do this. So we're going to dedicate our next time together. We're going to take a short break and talk about how people can get involved. We talked a little bit about the volunteers, take a bit of a deeper dive into that as well. But I want to talk about the financial piece, and specifically, I really want to focus on any gifts that people can give, but also that monthly gift and ways that people can get involved and support shelter movers ongoing. So when you're wanting to grow, that those things all make sense. We're going to say goodbye to Aaron. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you here from Shelter Movers Ottawa. Courtney, you're coming back.
Yes.
Don't leave me. Okay. And I don't want you to leave either. Stay with us here on An Hour to Give. Well, we've shared so many of the challenges when it comes to intimate partner violence. We've shared the solution is Shelter Movers Ottawa, and now they need you. And Courtney Waterfall's back to tell us how you can get involved and support. And once again, we talk about time, talent, and treasure. Yes. I love the definition of philanthropy being those three components, because it means everybody can get involved. We've talked a lot about the importance of volunteers today. So we've got the volunteer component. You obviously have board members. You've got people fundraising. You've got people moving. There's every kind of job you could possibly have. Let's focus on the gift of time. So talk to me a little bit about how people can get involved.
There's lots of ways people can get involved. So like you said, the volunteer piece is so important, and we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do. We wouldn't be able to move 20 families every month without the volunteers that we have. But we're always looking for people to get involved in other ways too. So whether it's donating, one-time donations are amazing, monthly donations are incredible, and running third-party fundraisers is always a great way. Getting their like a service club involved, whether they want to share their talents in some sort of way with us or to make a financial donation as well.
So let's break that down, because I think, if I was to, donate, let's say $250,
Sure.
what would $250 do?
That can provide all the supplies needed on the day of the move for our team.
Fantastic. So that's wonderful. But if someone can donate $50 and maybe their neighbor's donating $50, all that adds up, and you need $250 to make this move happen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I love the number $250, because if you donate basically, $20 a month,
Absolutely.
$25 a month, you're helping to move somebody once a year. And as a
Yes.
family, making that philanthropy plan and saying, here's who we're going to help this year, there's also a lot of reward that comes with that.
Yes, it makes such a difference, and we see this with our volunteers as well. 4 hours of their time, and they've completely 100% changed somebody's life.
Wow.
And so when you think about that in terms of a donor, $250 or $2,000 to cover the storage piece as well, and you've completely changed somebody's life.
That's incredible, really.
Yeah.
When you think about the ways we've all spent $250, let's be honest, right? On trinkets and all those kind of things that certainly aren't changing people's lives.
Yes.
So the monthly piece is really important. The gifts of securities as well. I think this time of year, a lot of people like to think about creative ways to give. They may have some securities. They're going to see, a big sort of cash grab by the government there.
Yeah.
They want to save those, those dollars by donating to charity. They can save those monies as well. So a gift of security would be welcomed.
Yes, we will. We'll take donations kind of however we can get them. There's been a lot of talk in the community about adding charities to their wills as well. So that's such an important piece to think about too. And any donations made get a tax receipt too.
For sure, for sure. And let's stop a little bit on legacy giving. I'm very passionate
Yes.
about this way of giving, because it really can be the most transformational gift you can make. Ironically, not in your lifetime, but you're making that commitment to Shelter Movers Ottawa in your lifetime, and at your death, you help potentially hundreds of people. It really can be
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, the impact that the dollars that are donated makes is really long lasting. When I think about the clients we serve and we get them out of their abusive home, you're not just changing their life, you're changing their children's lives, you're changing, generations to follow as well. We don't know what that client or what their children are going to go on to do with their lives, but if I think about those kids and getting them out of the abusive home, and now they're in a healthy environment, they're able to do well in school and go on to, be a paramedic or be a doctor or a teacher or a social worker. How many lives are they going to change? Because, in 2024, we helped them move out of an abusive home. And then I think about the impact on the community, where police don't need to respond to a domestic violence call at a house. So they're able to respond to a car crash faster. Paramedics are able to respond quicker to that and able to save somebody that might not have, they might not have been as quick to respond if they were responding to a domestic violence call. So it's really, we're changing countless lives with every move we make.
Wow, that's really impactful. I never thought about it like that. I think there's certainly an opportunity here for corporations as well to get involved. I know I've been really excited to be part of your special events over the years, and we'll look forward to the next one you're having. But I think those are those opportunities as well. A lot of times this time of year is when people are thinking, what do we want to do to celebrate the holiday season? And not everybody needs another trinket on their desk. They pool their money together, they pick an organization, and they say, we're going to donate to Shelter Movers Ottawa this holiday season as a way of representing our corporation, which is a great way to give too.
Yeah, or donating, they each pick a charity that is important to them,
Love
and
that.
their family members make a donation to that charity, and hopefully that's Shelter Movers. But
We've talked about all the different things you need for a move. Is there still a need for any gifts of kind, for instance, and gifts in kind, whether it be if somebody does have storage or somebody does have a truck or somebody has moving supplies, is that something that you're entertaining as well?
yes, we're always looking for more storage. We're almost at capacity with storage, so sometimes our clients might have to wait a little bit before we can move them into storage. So storage is always hugely important, as well as moving vehicles, and we use passenger vehicles as well as moving vehicles. So our volunteers are not using their own vehicles on a move. So Donations to cover the moving vehicles would be really helpful as well. And then we can always use moving supplies too.
And there's creative ways to get involved. I mean, that's what I love about this organization is every move is unique, but yet everyone can get involved. Like it's really, there's a beautiful match there for everyone in the community.
Yeah, it's an amazing way for a whole bunch of different individuals to be able to use their talents to support the same cause, but with a way that works for them.
And we talked about the staggering numbers. I mean, you shared earlier, I believe it was over 130 women killed in this country this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only September.
Yes.
I mean, that's staggering to me.
More than one every other day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really upsetting. I mean, when you think about people that are just trying to live their lives supposedly safe in their own environments with people that probably have proclaimed at one point or another that they loved them.
Yeah.
It is hard to hear that. This country, unfortunately, is no different than many countries around the world where every country faces it. The fact that Shelter Movers Ottawa is making such a dent here in this community is really speaking to the volunteers and the team that's built Shelter Movers.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be able to do it without the continued support of everyone in the community, whether it's a volunteer or a donor or a community member that's just sharing our message, somebody that's supporting us in whatever way they can, sharing something on social media just to make others aware. All of that makes an impact on the work that we're doing and the number of survivors we're able to support.
Courtney, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, there's so many things. I think I would love if Shelter Movers didn't need to exist. In an ideal world, like that is the goal, but I know that we are needed and we're going to be needed forever, unfortunately. Just making sure that we're able to meet the needs in the community.
Are you ever worried about somebody calling and you don't have the resources, you don't have the monies to help?
That is a very real fear every day. We're fortunate we have 192 volunteers, I think, in the Ottawa and surrounding area, but we always need more. There's always, every time we increase our move targets and are able to meet that need, the need grows. More people find out about us, we get more phone calls. So it's an ever increasing need for our services.
Because it sounds wonderful to see that people are brave and they've made the decision and now's the time and I'm going to get out of this situation. I'm going to get my kids out of this. I want to start fresh. But if hundreds of women are choosing to do that, or people that identify as women choose to do that, it puts so much pressure on you. So we all need to rally behind you.
Yes, because we want every woman that makes the decision to leave to be able to leave with their belongings. We don't ever want to have to say no.
Yeah, so important. And what gets you jumping out of bed in the morning to do this work?
Oh, our team. Like that is the best part of my job, is talking about how amazing our people are and knowing that they've come together to move someone. Like we said earlier, moving is awful.
Right.
But these people are donating their time to do that, and it's incredible to see. We put a call to action out to our volunteers to, do 4 or 5 moves over the next week, and we have signups for all of them.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Wow. What is something that you think that maybe would surprise us about Shelter Movers Ottawa?
I think a lot of people are probably surprised by the need in the community. I don't think a lot of people realize how prevalent it is here. So that's the message we want to get out, that it's a very much needed service, and we're filling a gap that no one else is doing. So it is a very niche market that we're filling.
And I think even just that piece, because I didn't know that. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about our community when I found out what do people do, and a lot of people are staying because of stuff, and not that stuff doesn't have emotional attachment and memorabilia, and if I had to leave my house today, what would I grab,
Yeah.
But I think it's important to realize that you're really the only ones doing this.
Yes.
It's not like there's a, you go to the phone book and there's 10 of you. There's one organization in this community. The fact you're working not only in Ottawa proper, but rural Ottawa, that's a really strong message today too. I think there's a lot today that we've shed a light on.
Yeah, and there is that financial barrier. So we know moving's expensive. If you rent a moving truck and pay a moving company to come move you, that's expensive. But if our clients leave without their stuff and they have to buy all of those things new again, that is a huge financial burden as well. So we're kind of knocking that financial barrier in a couple of different ways where they don't need to start all over. They can start fresh without having to start over is kind of how I like to look at it.
And I know you have some incredibly generous donors, and it's,
We
you know,
do.
those monthly donors, those people that have made major gift to you, those people that make that annual gift that you're always on their radar. What would you say to them?
Thank you. We wouldn't be able to do it without our donors. They're just as important as our volunteers.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how the community has come together. And although, as you pointed out, we wish that shelter movers didn't have to exist because that would mean there would be no intimate partner violence. The fact that you're here, the fact you're willing to really answer the call for anybody that picks up the phone and says they have to get out of a situation like this, that's incredibly rewarding work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Congratulations to all of you. I
Thank
know how
you.
hard you work. Believe me, I know it. I know it. And please extend all of our thanks to all of the volunteers and all of the donors and everybody that does this work. It really is incredible to have you in our community.
I will. Thank you so much for your support.
Of course. Courtney Waterfall joining us today, Chapter Director for Shelter Movers Ottawa. This is an important organization to me, and I'm hoping today that we've shed some light on why this important organization exists in this community. There's no two ways about it. The numbers are staggering. But recently, when we learned about just one woman that lost her life, each and every one of us thought, there's no way that's happening in our community. But it is. Please reach out to Shelter Movers Ottawa and find out how you can help. I'm Sam Laprade. This has been An Hour to Give. Thanks for spending time with us.